Welcome to NFL Nexus. If you really want to understand the microscopic realities and the high-stakes chess matches going on behind the scenes in professional football, well, you are in the exact right place. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought down below. And hey, if you truly want to support the channel and dive even deeper into our forensic breakdowns, please consider becoming a channel member. Okay, the time for pleasantries is officially over. The Dallas Cowboys are stepping onto the precipice of a season where the margin for error isn't just thin, it is entirely non-existent. This isn't just another casual training camp trip down to Oxnard. We're looking at a corporate, multi-billion-dollar operation staring right down the barrel of a complete identity crisis. We're talking about a roster constructed with agonizing precision, burdened by unimaginable historical weight, and marching toward a season where jobs, legacies, and the very fabric of this franchise are literally on the line.
Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Just let that question sit with you for a second. For decades now, the Dallas Cowboys have lived in this terrifying paradox. They exist in a world where historic, deafening expectations constantly, and I mean constantly, collide with a bitter, agonizing reality on the actual football field. The tension inside that building, it isn't just palpable, it's suffocating. Every single drop pass, every blown assignment, every missed coverage in a random Tuesday practice is magnified 1,000 times over. They are fighting the ghosts of their own past just as much as they're fighting the other 31 teams in the National Football League. And as we look at this upcoming season, the stakes have literally never been higher.
So let's dive into this, because to really grasp the sheer desperation of this offseason, you have to look at the brutal autopsy of 2024. Dak Prescott led one of the most statistically dominant, ruthless offenses in all of football. I mean, we're talking about a well-oiled machine that could effortlessly dictate the pace of a game, shredding secondaries and completely dominating the time of possession. But, and this is the tragic flaw of those 2024 Cowboys, that entire offensive infrastructure was brutally let down by a total collapse on the other side of the ball. The defense didn't just bend, it completely broke. It shattered when the lights were the brightest. The front office realized pretty quickly that having an elite offense is absolutely meaningless if your defense turns into a sieve the second the winter months hit. That imbalance wasn't just a weakness.
Which brings us to a move that perfectly encapsulates the front office's desperate scrambling to maximize this offensive window: the trade for Jonathan Mingo. Look, they didn't just sign a guy off the street here. They gave up a precious fourth-round draft pick to the Carolina Panthers right at the midseason trade deadline. And you know this. In the NFL, a fourth-round pick is absolute gold. It's cheap, controlled labor. It's a potential four-year starter. To surrender that for Mingo, a former number 39 overall selection, was a massive, high-stakes corporate gamble. The front office essentially pushed all their chips into the middle of the table, betting heavily that a change of scenery would unlock that explosive potential Mingo showed back in college. They didn't just want another body in the receiver room. They needed a legitimate weapon to finalize their offensive arsenal.
Now, we really have to confront the devastating reality of what that trade actually yielded in 2024. Five catches. That is the sum total of Jonathan Mingo's production during his initial stint with the Cowboys. He secured a mere 5 catches for 46 yards across 8 agonizing games. Now, let's be fair. Context is totally crucial here. Learning a highly complex, timing-based NFL offense mid-season, it's like trying to learn a new language while running full speed on a treadmill. The route trees, the sight adjustments, building that unsaid chemistry with Dak Prescott, it all takes serious time. So the production wasn't there, but the front office, and honestly a lot of the fans, kind of gave him a pass. They looked to 2025 as the year this massive investment would finally pay off.
But then, the nightmare compounded chronologically. It started right in the preseason. Just as Mingo was supposed to be building that vital chemistry we just talked about, he suffers a devastating PCL sprain. And just like that, the momentum, completely gone. He gets placed on injured reserve, basically vanishing into the rehabilitation room while the entire offense evolves without him. He isn't even activated until October 21st. By then, the train had already left the station. By the time he finally got back out on the grass, he was basically a ghost in the machine, appearing in just 6 games as the entire season just slipped right through his fingers.
Let's pause for a second. We need to truly understand the microscopic, physiological reality of this specific injury. A PCL sprain is not some minor bruise you can just tape up and play through. It's not a contusion you can grit your teeth and ignore. The posterior cruciate ligament is the primary, indispensable stabilizer of the human knee. It is the vital biological cable that prevents your shin bone from violently sliding backwards during sudden deceleration. For an explosive NFL wide receiver like Jonathan Mingo, a man whose entire professional livelihood relies on sudden, violent stops, immediate deceleration, incredibly sharp cuts, and planting his foot in the ground to rip separation from elite defensive backs, a compromised PCL is an absolute death sentence for your route running. You simply cannot trust your base. You lose that critical, microscopic fraction of a second. And you and I both know, in this league, a fraction of a second is the entire difference between a crucial first down and a pick six. But even worse than the physical limitation was the temporal theft. This injury robbed him of the most crucial developmental reps of his entire career. While the rest of the offense was synchronizing in August and September, Mingo was strapped to a training table. When you're operating in a hyper-complex offense, missing those microscopic moments of chemistry with your quarterback means you are basically dead on arrival when the real bullets start flying.
And the catastrophic fallout of that timeline is perfectly captured right here in the data. I want you to forensically examine these numbers because they tell a story of an absolute freefall. In 2024, as we established, the output was incredibly low. 8 games, 5 receptions, 46 yards. It was an adjustment period, a write-off, right? We expected the floor to be established there, with literally nowhere to go but up. But the floor didn't hold. The floor completely collapsed into the abyss. In 6 games played in 2025, he was targeted a grand total of 5 times. Listen to that. This isn't just a lack of production. This is a complete lack of existence within the offensive game plan. When a quarterback drops stack and goes through his progressions, you aren't even registering as a viable option. You're just running empty miles on the turf. Target share is a direct reflection of trust, and this data absolutely screams that all trust had evaporated. The 2024 season was a disappointment, sure, but the 2025 season? It was a statistical tragedy for a former top 40 draft pick.
Just one. A single lonely catch. 1 reception for 25 yards on just 5 total targets across an entire NFL season. I want you to really feel the suffocating weight of that singular digit. This is a player the franchise traded a highly valuable 4th-round pick for, a guy meant to be the final explosive piece of an elite offense, and he produced a single catch. In the ruthless meritocracy of the National Football League, a number like that next to your name is a blaring siren. It is the universe telling you that you are standing right on the edge of a cliff looking down.
But nature abhors a vacuum, doesn't it? And in the National Football League, if you leave a vacuum on the depth chart, someone is going to violently fill it. While Mingo was battling his knee and his rapidly diminishing target share, Ryan Flournoy completely seized the opportunity. Flournoy didn't just fill in, he completely usurped the WR3 position. He earned the trust of the coaching staff, he earned the absolute trust of the quarterback, and he locked down his role. Because of Flournoy's rise, the entire battlefield for Mingo has fundamentally shifted. He is no longer fighting for his starting role, he is fighting for his professional life down in the murky, chaotic depths of the roster.
This sets up the impending WR4 battle as an absolute war of attrition. Mingo isn't just competing against some undrafted rookies trying to make a name for themselves, he is walking straight into a meat grinder against established, incredibly dangerous veterans. On one side, you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a massive target, a proven deep threat, and crucially, a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He brings a veteran gravity and a championship pedigree to that wide receiver room that coaches absolutely adore. Then, on the other side, you have Cavante Turpin, an absolute bolt of lightning and a proven all-pro returner. Turpin's special teams value makes him an absolute lock for the 53-man roster. You just do not cut a weapon like Turpin. So where does that leave Mingo? He's sandwiched between a proven champion and a special teams phenom, fighting for absolute scraps in a crowded, claustrophobic wide receiver room.
So the crucial point is this. The clock is ticking, and the ticking is deafening. I call this the Oxnard ultimatum. The team arrives in California on Monday, July 27th. They strap on the helmets for the first practice on Wednesday, July 29th. Mingo's objective isn't just to have a quote-unquote good camp. He must hit the ground running with a violent urgency. If he shows up with any hesitation, any rust, any lingering doubts from that PCL injury, it's over. I am stating this as bluntly as I possibly can. If Jonathan Mingo does not immediately carve out an undeniable role in this explosive offense, he will be cut. He will be out on the street, searching for his 3rd team in 3 years, carrying the dreaded bust label into the free agent wasteland.
Section 2. A rebuilt defensive empire. While the offense battles for survival on the fringe, the front office finally recognized that the defense required a violent revolution. Minor tweaks weren't going to cut it anymore. They needed to tear the entire house down to the studs.
And as we know, every empire needs an architect. Enter the new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker. This was a massive, gritty, totally under-the-radar swing by the front office.
Parker isn't some recycled retread coach. He is a rising tactical mastermind. For years in the 2020s, he operated in the shadows as the secondary coach under defensive guru Vic Fangio with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was the invisible hand molding one of the most elite, suffocating secondaries in the entire NFL. He completely understands how to disguise coverages, how to confuse elite quarterbacks, and how to create a culture of absolute ruthlessness on the back end.
But look, you don't just hire an architect without giving him the raw materials to build with, right? Meticulously, chronologically, the Cowboys completely reinvented their defensive identity this offseason. It started with securing Parker's brilliant mind. Then they attacked the NFL draft with brutal efficiency. They followed that by strategically picking off free agents to plug specific structural holes. And finally, they executed a calculated trade with a bitter rival to finalize the unit. This wasn't just some random assortment of off-season moves. This was a master plan executed with cold, calculated precision.
And the absolute crown jewel of this master plan? Pick number 11. Drafting a player at 11th overall means you aren't just drafting a solid contributor, you are drafting a savior. With that pick, they selected Ohio State star Caleb Downs. The expectations placed on this young man's shoulders are immense, honestly bordering on unfair, but Downs is a generational talent. The front office didn't draft him to sit on the bench and learn behind a veteran. They drafted him to be an immediate, franchise-altering weapon in the secondary. He is the living, breathing physical embodiment of Christian Parker's new, hyper-aggressive philosophy.
But Caleb Downs can't do it alone. The ranks needed violent reinforcement. First, they brought in cornerback Kobe Duran in free agency. It seems like a microscopic shift, but it provides vital man coverage flexibility on the perimeter. Then they snagged safety Jalen Thompson, adding a physical, heat-seeking missile to the box to enforce the middle of the field. But the move that truly shows the cold calculation of this front office was the trade with the San Francisco 49ers to acquire linebacker D. Winters. Trading with a primary NFC rival is incredibly rare, but Winters brings a sideline-to-sideline speed that this defense so desperately lacked. These aren't just random names on a depth chart. These are specific surgical strikes designed to perfect Christian Parker's scheme.
And we absolutely cannot talk about this defense without focusing purely on the violence of the trenches. Because we all know the war is won up front. This season marks the terrifying reality of Quinnen Williams entering his first full season at defensive tackle within this specific system. The hype surrounding his raw, unadulterated power is absolutely deafening. But paired with that ascending dominance is monumental pressure. Then, on the edge, you have Rashawn Gary. Gary is entering this camp with a chip on his shoulder the size of a boulder, fueled by a desperate hunger demanding a massive bounce-back year to completely erase a highly disappointing 2025 campaign. The collision of Williams' ascending dominance and Gary's desperate hunger creates a defensive front that has the potential to absolutely ruin opposing offensive game plans.
We need to broaden the lens significantly here. This entire explainer, the desperate wide receiver battles happening in Oxnard, the violent reconstruction of the defense, this isn't just about surviving training camp cuts. It's much bigger than that. This is about assembling a roster that is historically mandated to compete for one thing and one thing only: Super Bowl XLI. Anything less than a championship parade in Dallas is viewed as an abject, humiliating failure. The standard is set in stone, and every single snap in July and August is a stepping stone toward that ultimate, terrifying target.
And the national media is definitely taking notice. Connor Orr of Sports Illustrated framed it with absolute authority, writing, "Dallas took a big swing at a great under-the-radar coach in Christian Parker, on top of adding a ton of defensive help via free agency and the draft." That quote isn't just a casual observation. It is a validation of the front office's master plan. National analysts, like Orr, now list Dallas among an incredibly exclusive group, just 14 teams legitimately capable of claiming the Lombardi Trophy this season. The blueprint has been approved, now it just has to be executed.
So, it really all comes back to this. Will this brutal defensive makeover, combined with an explosive offense fighting for its final pieces, finally end the decades-long drought? Or is this just the setup for another heartbreaking, tragic chapter in the history of the Dallas Cowboys? This isn't over yet. The war in Oxnard is just beginning. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this explainer, and comment down below with your predictions as this brutal training camp unfolds. Support NFL Nexus, become a member, and I will see you in the trenches next time.